Welcome to Cultimatum, the podcast uncovering the dark realities of cults and human trafficking. I'm your host, Anonymous Andrew, and each week we dive deep into the manipulation, control, and courageous escapes that define these worlds.
And I'm Melody, Andrew's co-host. Having experienced the depth of a cult firsthand, specifically the House of Yahweh, I am here as an advocate for fellow survivors.
The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not reflect the official policy or position of Cultimatum or its affiliates. The content discussed on this podcast are based on personal experiences and should not be construed as factual or legal advice. Neither the host nor the guest are liable for any statements made during the episodes. Listeners are encouraged to conduct their own research and seek professional advice where appropriate.
And before we dive into today's episode, we want to issue a trigger warning. Some episodes may cover explicit and potentially disturbing subjects such as sexual abuse, rape, human trafficking, suicide, and other sensitive subjects. Listener discretion is advised. Hey, Cultimatum fans, before we dive into today's episode, we need a tiny favor from each of you.
That's right. If you love what you hear, please take a moment to rate and review us on Apple and Spotify.
Your support helps us to reach new listeners and bring more awareness and attention to these important topics.
So tap that star rating, drop a quick review, and help us spread the word. It really does make a difference.
Thank you so much for tuning in and for your amazing support. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now let's get started with the show.
Here we go. Welcome back to another episode of Cultimatum Podcast, the culture of cults and human trafficking. My name is Anonymous Andrew, and with me tonight is my co-host Melody. Hello, Melody.
Andrew. Today, our guest is someone who reached out to us directly, and we're so glad that she did. Pamela Redd is a survivor of the Worldwide Church of God, known for its rigid doctrines, authoritarian leadership, and controlling environment. After being disfellowshipped, Pam began the difficult journey of healing, self-discovery, and reclaiming her own voice. She recently published her memoir, Finding and Reclaiming Yourself, a memoir of triumph after being disfellowshipped from the Worldwide Church of God. And she is here to share her story with us today. Pam, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We might as well just tell the audience we did this about a month and a half ago. Due to technical difficulties, we have to re-record this episode. Thank you, Pam, for coming back and redoing this. And I thought it was a great cult story. But the audience hasn't heard it. We have, yes. But let's start from the beginning.
Right. Well, I'll start back at the beginning, which for me was when my parents, actually my dad, heard Herbert Armstrong on the radio. And back then it was Radio Church of God. He heard the broadcast, and I was about 5. And he was so taken with what he heard is he wrote into headquarters, and they had some people to come to our house to visit. Now, the reason I remember this is because these were white men coming into a black neighborhood, and this was probably around 1960. So that was not something you saw all the time. But after they visited, and I don't remember the time span, but we started driving every week from Beaumont, Texas to Houston, Texas, which is about 90 miles one way for church. Later on, I learned that our families, our extended families, were really distressed that we were doing something that they thought was so different with all the churches right there in that city. You know, why were we driving to Beaumont? To Houston from Beaumont. But it was because my dad and ultimately my mother had become involved with the Worldwide Church of God.
That's a long way to drive for church.
That's a long, and we were kids. I don't know how I did it because we didn't have technology back then to keep us company.
You had no iPads, no Nintendos, no cell phone, no gimmicks in the back, electronic gimmicks. And I remember those days because I traveled to Southwest with my dad, and it was always every half hour, are we there yet? Dad, are we there yet? Because it was boring.
Yes.
And my dad would say, look out the window, look how beautiful the countryside is. You're seeing America. And, as a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, you're like, huh? you don't
Right.
appreciate that. So,
Right.
okay.
Right. So, our visit to church, our church visits, were not in a traditional church like you might think. This particular service was at like a VFW hall or something, and they had World War II pictures on the wall. And one of the things that stood out to me was that all the Black people had to sit in one section, and the white people were in sections all around us. Now, this was early 60s, and Houston was kind of integrating, but the church was kind of behind when it
Still
came to that.
segregating.
Very, very segregated.
And your parents were
Ultimately,
comfortable with that? They didn't seem to be bothered by that?
I have talked to my brother about that, and we're both like, "How did y'all do this?" But I think my dad believed that this worldwide church was the one true church, and I think all that other stuff, it just kinda rolled off because he thought this was gonna be the way he was going to make it into God's kingdom by being in this particular church.
And that makes sense because that is what you do when you're in a cult. You justify what you would normally find the unjustifiable, right? You justify things that you wouldn't in a normal circumstance. But in that cult realm, you either make excuses or you justify what would normally be a red flag. Because I would think that especially for your family, that would have been a red flag,
Right, and we weren't the only Black family. There were a lot of Black people. I mean,
right?
given the circumstances, there were quite a few. And we ultimately moved to Houston, Texas from Beaumont because one of the things the church taught was that your extended family was not really your family, that the people in the church were your family. So, your extended family, we were not to be as close as we were because they were worldly. That's the term they use. They weren't converted. That's another term they used. And so once we moved to Houston, the church became my life. That was it. I mean, we went to public school, but we weren't to associate with the kids at school. We weren't to associate with the kids in the neighborhood. My parents did let me walk to school with them and back, but aside from that, the normal things that I found out later that people do, like go spend the night and go with each other's friends on vacations, and we never did anything like that except with people in the church.
Right. So isolated.
Very, very isolated, which, as you might imagine, made me very, very, different at school because I wasn't participating in Halloween, no Christmas, no birthdays, no Valentine's Day. I couldn't participate in any of those parties, so I was the new girl from Houston that, couldn't do any of these things, and I do remember a teacher who probably would get fired now if she did this. But she got in front of the class and she was explaining that there are some people in this world that don't believe in Christ, so they don't keep Christmas. Well, I'm like 8. It's 3rd grade. I'm 8, in whatever age you are, 8 or 9, and I knew couldn't say anything back to her because, especially back then, you didn't cross your elders. So I didn't say anything to her. And I remember, I think I told my parents, but they didn't do anything about it because, we were taught that we're supposed to be persecuted for his name's sake or whatever. Anything
Well,
that you went through. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what I know about the Worldwide Church of God is they do believe in Christ,
Right.
right?
Right.
They
Yeah.
just don't believe in
Right.
Christmas.
They just don't believe in Christmas. But I'm 8, and I couldn't tell my teacher that. I mean, I
Right,
didn't.
right, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
You didn't feel
yeah,
like that would come across as disrespectful to correct your teacher.
yeah. Especially back then. Nowadays, the kids would, like, it's very different. But
Wait.
yeah.
Christ is the last name of Jesus. Jesus Christ. This is how I just as a preference disclaimer, Roman Catholic brought up. So Jesus Christ was our Lord and Savior. And Christmas was the birth of Jesus Christ. So although I know we can go into the whole pagan holiday thing, what Why didn't they not want to celebrate that?
Because they said Christ was not born on December 25th.
Which I heard. Okay.
Right. And then the other thing was that there's some scripture about I think they said it was in Jeremiah. Don't I might not be right, but that described a Christmas tree, and it was associated with something very negative that happened. So that was why we didn't keep Christmas, which is something I never really understood and something I never got over because I do remember celebrating Christmas before
Right.
we moved to Beaumont. And it was a big deal for me. But that was the reason that they gave as to why we didn't celebrate Christmas. So, our house was dark on, trick or treat night, and it was dark on Christmas. We didn't ride around and look at lights or anything like that. So it
I can
was.
relate to all of that because the house of
Mhm.
Yahweh that I was in, they actually a lot of his teachings pulled from the Worldwide Church of God. He actually, I think, went to one of their, like, training seminars, and him and his brother studied at the Worldwide Church of God before they started their own House of Yahweh spinoff church. So I
Oh,
can
wow.
relate to they took a lot of those same teachings, and we did the same thing, shut off all your lights at Halloween, don't turn your porch light on,
Mhm.
hope nobody knocks at your door, and then if we were told if anybody does knock at your door, to give them a booklet about why Halloween is pagan.
Oh, wow, how embarrassing. I mean, because
Yeah,
it's your I'm
embarrassing.
sure it's your friends from the neighborhood, from the neighborhood.
Exactly.
The Yeah, yeah. The other restrictions were, we didn't go to doctors because, God could heal us. When you got sick, you asked the minister for basically a handkerchief that he would put olive oil on, and he would pray over you, and that was supposed to heal everything. Because if you got sick, even with a cold or whatever, they were saying that that was because you had sinned somehow. Any kind of accident or, illness that you had, it was based in some sin that you had committed.
Now, were there exceptions for, like, an emergency, or what about childbirth? Were women allowed to go to the hospital to have children?
I think so. I mean, my mother, by the time we came in, my brother was already here. He's 5 years younger, 5.5 years younger. So I think when she went to the hospital, I think she did the normal thing. I don't know about some of the other ladies,
Okay.
and whether they did or didn't. That's not even something I just thought about until now.
Right.
Some of them may not have.
'Cause I know that, and it may depend on exactly which branch of worldwide you were involved in, but I know that that can vary from sect to sect, and
Mhm.
they may have had different rules, but, I know that the other ones that I'm aware of, I thought, like, for emergencies, like, if you're in a car accident or you break an arm or something, they'll make an exception, but you're not supposed to just go to the doctor for normal everyday things.
They did make an exception, when I went to summer camp. I went to the church's summer camp. Just to back up and give you a little history, none of these, extra activities like camp and, imperial schools and ambassador college, none of these institutions were integrated. So they were for the white race only. I mean, and that was stated in whatever charter they had. And so when I went to camp, that was the first year that they allowed Black students or children to come to camp, but we had our own separate camp. We had a Black camp, and then think we were there for 3 or 4 weeks, and then they had a white camp. Now the exception was that I had to go to the doctor to get an exam to go to camp. I guess for insurance purposes, they had to do that, but that was my
Ah.
first visit to a doctor that I can remember, and I was 13. Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
and so the camp, okay, let me just clarify the segregation of the camp. It wasn't, like, divided like the church, meaning that you had you had to go at a different time? Like, the
Right.
meaning white people weren't even at the camp at the same time that you were there?
Yeah, not the campers. I mean, there were, workers and
Oh, okay.
some of the
The
counselors,
kids.
but yeah, the kids, it was an
Wow.
all Black camp. And then eventually they, changed that, but this was at a time when the country was integrated. I mean, so it was way behind the times. Yeah.
We just got to keep reminding the audience and ourselves, this was back in 1960. This was when Martin Luther was killed and assassinated, and this is what he was fighting for.
Right.
So this is not what you're explaining to us and telling us is not unusual for those times, and it was a lot worse than what you're explaining. There were, if I remember correctly, and I was young I was 6, 7, 8, 9, but churches back then were being firebombed. Am I not correct?
Yes, they were.
So
yeah,
you
and
guys
then
were being
we're also talking about the South too. So
the South too.
Right,
so you were being persecuted in every which way.
Right.
You were being segregated. You were being the Ku Klux Klan was just coming on the scene, or maybe even before that. The 1960s was a very tumultuous time. Now, of course, that's also when, like, Martin Luther King and many of his followers and civil rights movements started, but that wasn't until later in the 60s, right? 66, 67, 68.
Late 60s, 70s. Yeah, right. But the church took a stance against Martin Luther King and even referred to him from the pulpit. I heard it with my own ears. They referred to him as Martin Lucifer King.
Really?
And said he was just stirring up unrest and by this time, I'm hearing this at church, but I'm going to an integrated school. I'm living in a mixed neighborhood, but my church is segregated. I have
that had to be confusing. Were you a teenager at that time?
Yeah, I was.
That had to be confusing for you to process.
Yeah.
The
guy that I eventually married, I mean, he would just sit there fuming as a teenager. He's a couple of years older, and he was like, "This is not right. If they wanted to do something to us, they could kill us all." And naive me, "Oh no, they wouldn't do that, and it's going to change. It's going to be all right." I was a little bit more pie in the sky than he was, but he was always very upset about it,
and rightfully so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just.
Yeah,
it is a sad time in America. I mean, listen, there's a couple of times America has. I mean, we could go all the way back to when Columbus got here and killed the Native Americans. But this country has a lot of shame. But we learned and we moved on from it. But what happened in the 60s, 50s, and 60s in the South to the blacks and to the black community and to the churches, they paved the way to where, at least I hope 70 years later, 60 years later, things are much better.
Yeah, well, in some ways they're better, in some ways not. I mean,
I was going to say some people learned. Some people learned.
Some people learned.
Some people still haven't.
Yeah, some people are still of the mindset that we as Black people or any black and brown people, we should be in a different space than whites, and that's that it is what it does. It's what people believe.
Yeah, hopefully one day.
One day.
And I have to tell you, let me tell you a quick little story. When I was growing up, I grew up in a very affluent, upper white class community, but the very next town over, I mean, you could travel 2 blocks on a bicycle and it would go from black to white. And I don't mean that literally. I mean, I'm using the colors. Like, it went from night to day, where it was a beautiful house, and then it was the projects, the ghettos.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to name the area, but if people from New York, if I named the 2 towns, they would know what I was talking about. And where I grew up, my parents were tolerant. They were very religious people, very Catholic, and they preached to us all people are human, are created equal. But what I saw happening, and some of the other bigot and racist people that were on our blocks, we would see. I hate to say this, but I just have to tell you what I saw. We would literally see 2 young African American boys come in on one bicycle and cruise around our neighborhood, and then go out on 2 bicycles. So they were stealing bicycles from the rich people. But even that, when I saw that, as a child, I thought that was cool. Like, I was
That's a
like, hey,
yeah.
so I literally would go over, and of course, back then, as I was getting a little older, I was starting to get into smoking pot and stuff. I would seek out the black community because they had the best pot, in my neighborhood anyway. You couldn't find a white dude within miles that had a good bag of weed. It was just a strange time watching all the different dynamics because there were different parents and and I belonged to a Catholic church back then, and they were preaching one thing. And in our community was the Latinas. The Latinas came to the Catholic church, not the blacks. The blacks had their own church in that town,
Mhm.
as many of them. So so it was confusing for you, but it was confusing for me growing up because half my adult authorities were teaching racism, and the other
Mhm.
half were teaching tolerism. Like be kind and generous and blah blah blah.
Right,
So
right.
thankfully,
Ye
I learned to be tolerant and generous and not a racist.
Good,
So
good for you. When we moved to the neighborhood that we ultimately moved to where my parents bought a home, it was a mixed neighborhood, and it was a neighborhood that was in transition. So you had a lot of people that were like, "I'm not selling my home. I have been here for years." Just they have signs, "This is my home. It's not for sale," because the realtors were marketing to the fear and saying, "Oh, you don't want to live around black people." So fortunately for us, like the two people on either side of us, or they were white, nicest people. I mean, we didn't have any trouble with them. People across the street, we didn't have any trouble. But there was a little girl that lived probably about half a block away, and she was friends with my next door neighbor.
hmm.
And, there was some conflict there because she didn't think my neighbor friend should be playing with me because I was black.
Uh,
Um, yeah. Now, I don't recall my white friends from church being that way, and, I mean, we're still friends to this day. So, um, I think despite, um, our segregated church, I don't know people that really bought into that, and maybe that's a reason. They if they bought into it, they wouldn't be friends with me, but, they didn't buy into that, I don't think. Now, I do know that the white teens and their families, they socialized, and we pretty much socialized with the black people and black teens. As we got into adulthood, that still kinda stayed the same. It's only been, through social media that everybody contacts everybody. It was very separate, but from my vantage point, I didn't feel any animosity. I mean, because they would talk to me before church, and then once church started, we had to sit separate.
and when did that change? About how old were you when it changed and you didn't have to sit separate anymore?
I might have been like 16 or 17. I mean, it was late. It was
Okay.
so this is like in the 70s when they finally changed because everything in the church was separate. We had um different holy days, and there was one particular one that was called the Feast of Tabernacles, and we would stay on the big sandy campground. Well, they had a Negro camp area that was at
Mm.
the back of the campgrounds, and the white camp area was at the front. That eventually changed. But what that did was when you had the black SEP, the summer program, and you had, black people um, basically living together because Feast of Tabernacles was like an 8-day retreat. Uh, you knew each other. I mean, you not well, but, you look forward to seeing each other at the feast, and these were the people they were telling us, "These are your family members. This is your family." So, at some point, this all did change. When I graduated from high school, I was able to go to Ambassador College, but I was the 3rd group of black students that they had allowed. So started accepting single Black students in 1971, the fall of 71.
You about 2 minutes ago, you used a word that I have not heard in a long time in my adult life. I heard it a lot growing up, and that's the word Negro.
Yes.
That was very common as I was growing up.
Right. And that was a sign, and and that's why I said that, because it said Negro camp area.
Mm.
Yeah, and that was 60s, all during the 60s, and but eventually things changed, and I went to the church's college. I went to Ambassador College. And before I get to that point, I do want to also include that we had very strict rules about how to wear our hair. We couldn't wear makeup. Then we could, then we couldn't. I mean, it went back and forth. There were things we couldn't eat.
Like any cult, they changed the
Any
rules
cult, yeah, they do.
they
They
changed
do.
the
They
rules
do.
as they went along.
But the thing is, when you grow up in something like this, you don't realize until you look back how much it really affected you and still impacts you. One of the things they believed is that, you weren't supposed to eat pork, you're not supposed to eat shrimp, and they have all these dietary laws. Well, when I eat pork, I get physically ill. And I know I mean, it's mental. There's nothing, it's cooked well. Everybody's around me eating, they're not getting sick. But every time I have pork, knowingly, I get sick. So, uh,
It may
yeah.
not just be in your head, because I didn't eat pork for 17 years for the same reason, my cult. But I think too, your body does become intolerant of things that it's not introduced to. So
Okay.
I actually had to reintroduce pork very slowly into my diet because my body wasn't used to processing it, right? And I think your body
Right.
can become intolerant. So it might not all be mental, just to give you a little credit.
Okay, good. Because I've never, I was out at a brunch with some girlfriends, and they had pork chops and eggs, and she's like, "I'm gonna get this," and I'm like, "Oh no, I can't, I can't eat that." Because I was worried that it was gonna make me sick, and then she's somebody I've known a long time, and she says, "Oh, you only feel like that because that's the way you grew up." So, it's
And interestingly enough, I'll just throw in my 2 cents about pork. I grew up with pork ribs, pork, like baby back ribs, and pork tenderloin, but I always hated pork chops. I don't know why.
Oh,
But it's the
okay.
same freaking meat. It's
Yeah,
the same thing. So
yeah.
it's what your culturally or your family is, yeah, I'll leave it there. I could give you a bunch of more examples. So,
Yeah.
okay, but we're getting a great lesson on the civil rights and the black and the white. So look, you want to let's get back to the cult a little bit and what your experience going through. You were born into this cult, correct?
I was 5.
Child.
5. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a child. Yeah.
And so now let's take it into the 70s where you were, because you said I forget you just said, but you were becoming
College.
things were starting to change in the 70s.
Right. And I went to Ambassador College,
Right.
which
Okay.
was not in my original plans, because the church had said we were going to go to a place of safety. There was a booklet called 1975 in Prophecy. Well, by my calculations, that meant I wouldn't get to finish college. And so I was like, well, I'm going to just leave. I'm not going to go. Of course, I couldn't tell anybody that, but I just didn't want to go wherever they were going. It didn't sound like it was going to be anywhere I wanted to go. But like you said, with cults, they eventually changed that over time. And I guess they just stopped talking about it. I don't remember how that happened, but
The
in
world
high
didn't
school,
end, so they changed they either gave a new date or they didn't give a date again.
Right.
yeah, I don't know that they gave a date again. I don't think they gave a date.
They finally gave up because I think, and I've said this a dozen times. These doomsday cults, every time they get it wrong, it makes them look so bad. And I think maybe some of them finally just gave up on the dates because they just couldn't get it right. And they were looking, in my opinion, it was wrong. They looked stupid.
Yeah, they did. And And it's really scary when you think about, what happened with Jim Jones and all that, because
Hmm.
I think my group, I think people would have done it. I mean, I think they would have drank it. I mean, I just don't think they would have. There was not enough independent thinking for them to not do it. Because I do remember at one point the church went into receivership. I was young. I didn't know what that meant. I looked it up and I realized, oh, something happened that was not, kosher with the money. That's why the state had to
Oh,
take over. But the church was telling people to write letters saying that, "Oh, we don't want the receivership. We don't need them to come in because, we love the church and we're giving them our money," all that. And I remember talking to a couple of my friends. We were maybe young adults by then, and I'm thinking, "Y'all, a receivership, that means that they probably stealing our money. They're doing something with our money they're not supposed to." Well, they reported me because you weren't supposed to talk against the church and the ministers, and needless to say, I didn't write a letter, but, that's how ingrained these teachings were, that people were writing letters, and they didn't even really understand what it meant, but they wanted to support the church no matter what.
yeah. I've said the
So,
same thing
yeah,
about my call. I'm like, I thought if the leader wanted them to all take their own lives at the end, that I think they would have. If he had asked them to, they would have because they were that brainwashed.
right, and it
Would
is
you?
brainwashing.
Would you have?
Me?
No,
No.
Melody.
Oh, Melanie, yeah.
I think at one point I would have, but not after the multiple
Oh yeah,
marriage teaching
anything.
stuff.
Yeah,
That broke
anything.
it for me.
That did it.
I know that anything past that, I know you were P mode.
Yeah.
Yes,
You were
You're
home
exactly.
done.
home.
You're
You were
done,
po mode.
yeah,
You were
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and
But no, but Pam, I'll ask you the same question. Would you have?
at some point, I think I would have,
Mm,
but as I was getting old and it probably would have been, like, early teens, maybe,
mm.
but once I got older, I didn't wanna go to the place of safety. I didn't wanna go there, so I think I may have balked if it had come, around that time because I didn't wanna leave the comfort because they were saying we were gonna go to Petra, Jordan, and live in the rocks, and I'm like, "Well, I don't wanna do that." Wow.
I
Let
don't
me
blame
guess,
you.
on the wings
Yeah.
of an eagle? Were you gonna get there on the wings of an
Y
eagle?
Yes,
Oh,
Yeah.
see,
yes, we
Wow.
were.
I know this, Pam. He stole so many teachings from Herbert W. Armstrong, it's ridiculous.
That sounds like first class economy to me. I mean, not economy, first class business class. What? Shut up. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how we were supposed to get there, but I knew I wasn't gonna go, but it didn't get to that point. So I went to Ambassador College. Actually, I have to say that I, enjoyed my time there. I ended up being in the group called the New World Singers that ultimately became the Young Ambassadors. I say we were the originals. I traveled when it was time for Feast of Tabernacles. And this was all on people's tithes after I've thought about it. We'd fly to different locations or take a bus, depending on how close they were, and sing at all these different feast shows. I also traveled with Garner Ted Armstrong as a singer in a singing group of Ambassador College students. He would go and make what he called personal appearances, and he would go preach and we would sing. And so I got to do all that stuff. It was a lot of fun. Just
And just to
traveling
clarify for
around the
the
country.
audience, he was the leader of the cult, the main leader of all of the branches.
Right. And it was he and his father was Herbert Armstrong, and this was Garner Ted Armstrong. Now,
Okay, so the
while I
son.
was Yeah, it was the son. But while I was in college, the son branched off from the father, and we weren't supposed to talk to Garner Ted anymore. And then the college lost its accreditation. This was all kind of happening at the same time. So for me, I wanted to be a teacher, and so I'm thinking I can't get a degree from here because it's not going to mean anything. I'm gonna have to go back and go to school again. So, I left Ambassador College after 3 years, came home, and fortunately found a university that would accept my credits. I was on academic probation for a while, but they accepted my credits and I graduated and became a teacher. So that was what I wanted to do. But people stayed at Ambassador College, got that degree, and ended up having to go to another college and get another undergraduate degree from an accredited place.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So fast forward, I get married to the guy that was so upset about us sitting separate. That didn't work out. He had been he'd been to Vietnam, and at that time we didn't know, and we were used to be in touch, but when we talked about it, he didn't know what was wrong with him, and I certainly didn't know what was wrong with him. But he had PTSD, and
Yeah.
so
Back then,
yeah,
we know about it now
we know
with
now,
the
but
Iraq wars and Afghanistan. But back in the Vietnam days, even in the Korean wars, they didn't know how badly these soldiers were their minds were being
right,
corrupted, because you're taking young American young men, and sending them over to parts of the world where some of the abominations that these third world countries do to each other in the violence, and these guys are just forever scarred, forever.
right.
Nothing you could do about it.
He was 19 when he went.
Oh, wow.
Jesus.
Yeah.
this
And they
baby. Yeah,
knew
yeah.
they knew it was something, but they would call it like shell shocked before they had the term PTSD.
Yep.
Right.
They knew something wasn't right with these men coming back and that there was something going on, but they didn't have a term for it. But yeah, that would be really difficult to deal with in a new marriage and being that young. That's a lot.
Right. It was a lot. And so he and I had stopped going to church. So we were, young and free. But when that marriage didn't work out, I started back going to church and ended up in a second marriage that a rebound. He had been out of the church and coming back. I was out of the church and coming back. He had been married and divorced. I had been married and divorced. And the church sanctioned and encouraged the marriage because we were both attending. We had nothing in common and decided that, we just need to call it quits. We weren't even mad. It was just like this was a mistake. But our mistake was telling the ministers. And so I don't know why we did, but that's what we did. And they told us that we couldn't divorce, and they said, you have to go back. So, they gave me time to think about it. And of course the onus was on me, the woman. And so when I refused to go back, I was disfellowshipped. So, that was the beginning for me of a whole new life. It led me to figuring out, okay, who are you really? Because up until now, you've been in the church. And even when I was out, I mean, I, I married somebody that had been in the church, so it wasn't like I was on my own. I was afraid to go to a store on a Saturday because
Physically
that's the
out,
Sabbath.
mentally in.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
You were on the outside, but you were still somehow you had like this umbilical cord still connected to the cult, to the church,
Right.
to the
Yeah.
The pony.
And Melody, and Melody had that because when she
Yes,
was
I
finally left, first she knows the story. She'll tell it. 17 years, she couldn't work on Saturdays, like you just said, and she couldn't put up a Christmas tree. So these cults can plant this stuff in your head that will last for years and years until
years. Yeah.
And just going back to the pork, I mean, how many years did it take you to enjoy a pulled pork sandwich? I mean,
actually, I said 17 years for the pork, but 17 years was the Christmas tree. Actually, the pork was more like 20 years.
No, I'm talking about Pam. How many years before you enjoyed pork, or do you still don't enjoy it?
I still don't.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think it's psychological. I don't think it's
That's fine.
Yeah.
You know what? I was into pork, and now I'm a healthy guy. I don't eat any meat, so
okay.
You're not missing anything. Except maybe the baby back ribs. Those are really good.
I would say the pork I really like is bacon and pepperoni, which are probably the most unhealthy of all the pork.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I didn't even think pepperoni. Is pepperoni pork?
Yeah, it's pork.
Yes,
Okay,
pepperoni is
I
pork.
guess all sausages.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they have beef pepperoni, but it doesn't taste the same.
It ain't the
And
same.
they have
Or turkey. That
pepperoni.
doesn't taste the
Yeah.
same either.
I think that's called
Yeah.
salami. I think salami is more beef, but okay, we
Yeah.
digress.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So, my book is about of course, I tell my story, you know, leading up to all of this, but it's about trying to figure out who I was and start my life over at 30. I mean, I was 30, but I was like a toddler. I mean, there were so many things. I mean, even just like going to Target on a Saturday, I would just have to psych myself up and, you know, it's going to be okay. I'm like, well, what if I see somebody from the church? Well, no, you won't because they're not going to be going. I mean, it was just all of that. I had to learn how to make friends because my friends were handed to me. I mean, these were the people you were supposed to be friends with because y'all are all in the church. So I had to learn how to make friends. Fortunately, I did seek therapy because I thought, you know, this is not normal. I mean, nobody else is going through this but me. I'm, you know, new to the world at 30 years old. And so in my book, I talk about making that really transformation from being afraid to do anything other than what the church had taught me to flourishing. I mean, I have most of my friends didn't know this story, and so they've been like, "Oh my God, I had no idea you went through all this." And I carried a lot of shame behind that.
What's the name of your book?
It's called Finding and Reclaiming Yourself.
Okay.
And the subtitle is a memoir after being disfellowshipped from Worldwide Church of God.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's begin to wind down here. And so when did you write the book? What year?
Just this year. I wrote it in
Good.
June.
Okay, so
It was
good.
released in June.
Brand new.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Brand new. Yeah. Yeah.
What is your, I don't want to say purpose, what you wrote this book for, fill in the blank?
Felt like it was time to tell my story. I did not want to carry that shame anymore. The other part of that was I know people that are in my kind of my age group that don't talk about the way we grew up.
No.
So,
under the rug.
Yeah,
brush it
yeah.
under the rug. We don't talk about that.
So,
Was the old day. We don't talk about that.
Right, right.
What do you hope? So 2025 people that will hope. What do you hope that they get out of the book?
I hope that they, first of all, know that they aren't alone. That what we went through was awful, and it's okay to talk about it. And you didn't do it. I mean, you know, it's not my fault. It's not their fault. Yeah,
Good.
we didn't
Good for
do
you.
it to ourselves. And I have to say, I've heard from people that were like, "Oh, thank you. I mean, this is exactly what I needed to say." And so I'm hoping, you know, I'm a voice for those people that, you know, just because you're so hesitant to talk about it because you think, "Oh, people are going to think I'm weird." But, you know, I've gotten nothing but support from people that found out. I have a book signing coming up in a couple weeks. And so, everyone has been very, very supportive. So I just tell anybody that's been through something like this, you have to talk about it. You have to talk about it.
You write
It's
a
part
book
of the healing process.
It is.
You write a book, or like us, we have a podcast. It's there's a certain niche that you have that you're going after, and those people who are going to read that book or listen to the podcast or whatever other thing that maybe you're creative about, they're going to understand and follow you. And so don't ever feel as if people are going to think that you used a term earlier. I forget what it was.
I said weird. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where can we? This is silly because I know the answer, but where can we find the book?
The book is on Amazon.
Oh my
It's
God!
in,
what a shock!
Yes, it's in
That's
paperback and
perfect.
Kindle. Yeah.
So it's out there for
Yeah.
anybody to find.
For
Yeah.
anybody to find. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Amazon has just completely dominated that book. Although I think there's still some private book publishing, and I think Barnes and Noble still has some, but good for you. I'm glad you have an outlet for it. And anything else you want to talk about? Because Melody and I have a couple of questions we'd like to ask before we say goodbye.
All right. No, go right ahead.
Okay, my first question is after going through all of this, and I guess I'm going out on a limb here, but it has been a couple of decades between you leaving that cult and you writing this book. I would imagine your deconstruction process is complete. Where are you in your faith today?
I definitely am a person of faith.
Good.
I am Catholic.
Good.
My mother was Catholic. I was baptized Catholic as a baby, but didn't participate in anything until I became an adult. My faith has been what's kept me going through all of the craziness that I went through. I mean, because I could have turned out very, very differently. I mean, things could have been way, way different.
Absolutely.
So I know there is a God, and I know He's been looking out for me. And so, yes, I am strong in my faith.
Good. Oh, and that's out of all these up to 80 something episodes, the majority of our guests will say that they just have a higher power. They don't believe in organized religion. So, but that was a refreshing answer. So thank you for your honesty. That's
Yes.
good.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
it's different,
Welcome.
but
Yeah.
but I like that. I mean, I like that you were able to find that and you're able to find somewhere where you
Good.
feel comfortable. Again,
Agreed.
that's
Agreed.
awesome.
Yes,
And my
yes.
my final question for you, Pam, is that if there's somebody out there listening to this episode that is maybe a survivor of the Worldwide Church of God or is maybe questioning they're in that or another group or they're thinking about joining, what would be your advice to them?
If you're thinking about joining, do your research. Find out about this organization. See, I mean, everything's an open book now.
Yeah, it's all out
Right.
there on the internet.
It's all out there. And then the second thing is trust your gut. If it
Yeah,
doesn't
those are
feel
good. Yes.
right, if it's kind of
I've been
off,
hearing that a lot lately.
yeah,
Do you know that the gut instinct is a real thing?
yes.
I was talking on a social media platform earlier today, and there was some people talking about trusting their gut this is about a dating thing. I trust my gut that this guy something. And I said, trust that gut. That's an instinct that was given to us. Okay, I'll say it, by God or by a higher power who created us. They gave us these hormones that go around our body. It's called the fight, flight, or fight.
Mhm.
And these hormones will give you, it's like a radar, and it tells our body something isn't right. So
Yes.
trust that gut. Absolutely.
I agree. And I will
yes.
say, trust it when it first kicks in, because when you get into a cult situation, they actually
strip that
train
away
you
from
to
you.
not trust your gut. They train you that
Yep.
that's from Satan or it's from the devil and that it's the evil one sneaking his way in. So
They'll spin it
yes.
and twist it.
yes.
Yep.
So do it when you
Yes,
first
yeah.
have that gut feeling. Double check, do your research, just like Pam
Absolute.
said.
Yeah, absolute. Yes, yes.
All right. Pam, before we say goodbye, just anything quickly. Do you have any social media that you want us to follow or put on in Instagram, TikTok, anything?
I now have a website.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's pamredd.com.
REDD, right?
REDD. PAMREDD.com.
All right. We'll send everybody over there where they can
All
find out
right.
more about you and your experience and your book.
All right,
That will
then.
be in the
Thank
show
you.
notes.
All right,
Pam,
thank you.
Thank you for coming back and redoing this interview. This time it
Yes.
sounded like it came out perfectly. We had some technical difficulties the first time, and there was just no way I could piece it together.
Right.
So thank you so much for redoing this. I know it takes some time out, but let's get your message out there. Let's get your book out there, and hopefully we can help some people. All right.
All right, then. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
All right,
Thank you.
then.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. And once again, we want to thank Pam so much for coming back on the show and re-recording with us.
Yeah.
Andrew and I actually did get to hear different parts of her story, and it wasn't the exact same interview. Even though we were redoing the interview, we got to hear new and different parts of her story. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yes and no, because I did struggle to hear her the first time, but we were able to put together, I don't know, it was 15 minutes of recording, but when I went to edit it, it was just not editable.
It was a mess.
It was a mess. And I'm gonna blame Riverside again. You know what? I'm going to keep calling them out on it until they get it right. Anyway, yes, we did hear I thought today's interview was much, much better. We could hear her, and
Yes.
I was able to understand not only what she was saying, but really follow the bouncing ball. And I really want to thank her for coming back and doing that again. And yeah, I
Yeah, and
enjoyed that.
unique story. The segregation part is a unique part of her story, just because I think the location where she was, I don't think we're hearing that's
And,
something we haven't heard on this show a lot, which puts a
no,
whole nother element into her story and into her experience. So, I'm sure her
and
book is very interesting, or her memoir.
And I'm old enough. I'm would never ask her, but she looks similar to my age, maybe a little younger. But I grew up in that time. I know
Right,
all about segregation, and I would like the little story I told about my town being next to a different town. I saw it firsthand, and it
right,
was very confusing as a young boy because half my parents or the church or the school that I went to would preach, stay away from them. They're bad.
right,
But I hung out with them. I go down
right.
to and my buddies were like, "Hey guys, come down. We're gonna go over to that part of town." I'm like, "But no, we can't go over there." And I'm like, they were like, "Come on, knock it off, come over." And I did, and then when I went to college, thank God I did, because when I went to college in 1978, I had so many African American friends in college, and I didn't think twice about it. And
Good.
that was still kind of
Well, good.
like
So then
out.
you based it on your own experience. I mean,
Yeah,
and that's what people should do. So,
yeah, yeah.
judging people for who they are. Um, so,
Just the color of your skin. No, I mean
yes,
it's silly. It's silly.
it is. It is. I agree. So, but a great episode. And Pam was
Yes,
so gracious to come back and reschedule with us and meet up with us again. So, and then we had some scheduling issues with the first time she rescheduled, so we had to reschedule again. So it's been a
yep.
little bit to try to get all this together. So,
But I think it
yes,
was worth it. Yeah.
it was worth it, and we wanna thank her for coming on the show, and we also wanna thank all of you for tuning into Cultimatum. We do appreciate the support in our mission to expose the truth and highlight the voices of these survivors.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. And don't forget to follow, share, and keep listening to all of our latest episodes.
You can also follow Cultimatum on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for more content and updates.
Don't forget to join our Facebook group, Cultimatum Podcast, where we dive deeper into these important topics.
And if you are a cult survivor and you're looking for additional support, we do recommend joining the Cult Escape and Healing group on Facebook. And yes, I did change the name of that. So it used to be the Cult Escape and Recovery group. It is now the Cult Escape and Healing group on Facebook.
Fantastic. And if you're interested in hearing more of my work, head over to anonymousandrewpodcast.com, the website in which you will see all three of the podcasts that Anonymous Andrew Studios does. So you got Digital Dating, Cultimatum, and The Weekend Rant. And one of these days, The Weekend Rant, I have actually a very good Weekend Rant coming out this weekend. So, but by the time this airs, that would have already
It'll
aired.
be a little
so never
bit
mind.
over.
It'll be a little bit over.
Go listen to all of them so you'll figure out which one it is.
Yeah. Go. It's about dating profiles. So go back in about 4 weeks and you'll see it.
Find the title. And if you have a story
Yep.
related to cults or human trafficking that you would like to share, please email us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
Want to support the show? We could use your help. Please go to our show notes and you will see Us a Cup of Coffee. Click on the link and it will take you to a Buy Us a Cup of Coffee little window, and you can donate $5 or $10 to the show. Every bit helps, and thank you for those who have donated so far. We have received several donations.
Yes, we thank all of the people who have supported us, and as always, stay safe, stay informed, and remember, you are not alone.